Hey everyone, welcome to part 3 of the Frame Academy project, Create a WebVR site with basic HTML. So first I'm going to show you what I did for the challenge from part 2, which if you remember, the challenge was to adjust the position, rotation, and scale of some of the elements in your scene. So here's what I cooked up. You can see my code on the left and the project itself over on the right. See the site embedded there. And I've got it full screen here. So I brought in some cool things. I'm making kind of like a gallery of sorts. I've got this funky looking torus knot on this kind of pedestal. I've got some cones on some rectangles to look like some really basic trees, and just a few other odds and ends. The floor and the walls, these are planes, the entity A-plane, P-L-A-N-E. And a plane is just a 2D surface. It's not like a cube with 3 dimensions. It's just a flat surface. So you're welcome to just remix my project. You can do remix to edit if you'd like to start from there, but edit some things about it and keep other things. Or you can keep going on the project that you've been working on. It's up to you. Okay, so I'm pretty proud of what I've been able to do with just these shapes, using those box and plane and sphere and things like that. But you can bring a whole lot more into your scenes. And in this section of the project, I'm going to show you how to import 3D models that you might have found online or created using other software. So this really opens up a lot of different possibilities for you. And there are tons of places to find other 3D models. We're going to look at a site called Sketchfab, but you can go to like the Tinkercad gallery. You can go to a site called TurboSquid, and I have a whole list of them if you look on the site for the project. There are also tons of tools you can use to create your own 3D models, and these range from simple tools, things like Minecraft or Tinkercad, up to really complex tools, things like Blender or Maya and so forth. So if you're making your own 3D models, great. I'll show you a way you can bring them into your immersive website. But if you just want to find some, that's fine too. And we're just going to find some and run with them right here. So there are tons of different file formats for 3D models. Think about the different file formats for like documents. You have PDF, you have .doc, you have .pages, and sometimes they don't always convert into one another, or you're trying to open one with a piece of software and it's tough. Things have gotten a lot better with documents, but with 3D models, it's also very fragmented. You have all these different file formats, and there are lots of compatibility issues sometimes, and it's really been kind of a sad state of affairs with 3D models. But recently, there's been a format that has been getting a lot of traction with a lot of different people and a lot of different tools. It's called GLTF. And that's the format we're going to use. It's also the format that just plays best with this kind of WebVR stuff using A-frame, which is what we're using. Now, we are going to find models on a site called sketchfab.com. So first, just go to sketchfab.com. And if you're inclined, go ahead and create an account. It's free, and that'll let you download free models from Sketchfab. You can also buy models on Sketchfab, but we're just going to be searching out models that you can download for free for this. So once you're here, go ahead and search for something. I'm going to search for sheep. Okay. And once you search it out, Sketchfab will first try to sell you some stuff. That'll show up at the top. Fair enough. And then there'll be other things at the bottom. And I want to filter specifically by downloadable. So I'm going to go ahead and click this here. And I'll just see the downloadable 3D models. Okay, these look great. I see this little fella here. And I'm going to click on this one. You can tell it's downloadable. It'll have this little icon at the top right. Okay, so go ahead and click it. All right, you get a nice view of the sheep right here in the browser. It's very cool. You can see the artist, ArtBake3D. And you can see a few other things. You've got some geometry info, the number of triangles in the model, the number of vertices. And we're not going to get into the technicalities of this, but what you need to know is that 3D models can be simple or complex. And if they have very complex geometry, this number will be a lot higher. It'll be in the hundreds of thousands or even millions. And we want to stick with models with pretty simple geometry for now. I wouldn't go beyond 50,000 or 100,000. Sometimes models will work on desktop, but they won't work as well on mobile. If you want to keep it safe, I'd keep it under 50,000 triangles. You also see its license. You can see under what circumstances you're allowed to use the model. So a lot of these have licenses, Creative Commons licenses that say you can use it, but not in a commercial project. Others say you can use it in a commercial project, but you have to attribute the author. So fair enough. Be sure to check the license. Okay, last but not least, we've got a nice download button. So go ahead and click that, and you'll see a few options. Now, Sketchfab is fantastic because any model that anyone uploads to Sketchfab, they will automatically convert it into that format we need, GLTF. That's right. So at the bottom, you'll see auto converted format, GLTF, download. Go for it. Now that will download a zip folder. Okay, so go ahead and open that up. And what you want to do is extract it. So right click on it, do extract all, go extract. That'll extract the model, and you'll see a few different things. You're thinking, wait, I just got one sheep. Why do I have a few different files? Now, a 3D model consists of a few things. Okay? I'm going to go to the project page because this illustration is really helpful. So on the one hand, you have what's called a mesh. And this is kind of like the shape of the model. It's the geometry of it. Okay? And on the left here, you can see this is like the mesh of a model. Now, besides the mesh, though, you also have what's called a texture. And many 3D models also have textures. And the texture is what kind of determines the outward appearance of the model. So this is definitely a simplification, but in 3D models, you've got the mesh and you've got the texture, and often those are saved in separate files. Okay, so that's why you have a few different things in your folder, right? This 3D object file, this is the mesh, right? And then you have a folder with the different textures. And then there's the separate file that kind of shows everything how to tie together. Okay, that's all good and fine, but before we bring this into our WebXR site, we need to make it all one file. And the way to do that is fairly simple. On the project page, I give you a link to a service that Facebook actually makes. You don't need a Facebook account or anything, but it lets you convert or pack a model into just one file. It's very easy to use. Just drag the files onto this page. And then it'll spit out a unified file. It's just one file, and it'll be called out. You want to go ahead and rename that to whatever you want. I'm going to call this sheep unified. Okay. So we've got our sheep file. And once it's been packaged like this, it's called a GLB file. And we don't need to get into why that is, but it's really just a GLTF model that's been packaged a certain way to make it one file. Okay, that's fantastic. So we have our file now. So how do we actually bring it in to our project? So Glitch gives you a really handy way to do this. If you look above the index.html file, you'll see an assets folder. Go ahead and click on that. There's nothing in here yet, but this is where we want to drag our new unified sheep file. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And what this does is it lets us sort of host the file online, and it gives it a URL. And this is really what we need because it gives the project a way to kind of reference that model and find it. Okay? So once you bring your model in here, it'll show up like this. And you can click on it in Glitch, and you can press copy URL. All right, that's perfect. Now we're actually ready to go. We can go back to our index.html file, and we have to use a particular element called a GLTF model. Okay, so we've made it. Now, that itself doesn't do anything, right? It's kind of an empty element, right? We've defined the element, but to modify it, to say, oh, what model is this, and its position and so forth, we need to use attributes, right? These are the things that edit the HTML elements to determine their appearance and behavior and so forth. So we need to fill it in a bit. Now I already have this entity ready to go. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and just copy and paste it in, and then explain to you what I did. Okay. So there's our model, and I've added some attributes to it. I've given it a position, 0, 0, -3. I've given it a rotation, 0, 100, 0. This just gives it a little bit of a spin. And to actually find the model that we want to use, I've given it a source attribute. And for the source, I've pasted in that URL that I found here. Right? This is kind of the URL for our model, right? And I pasted it right in as the source. We've actually done this already when we set the source for our script element, right? But we're doing it again here, and this time the link actually is our 3D model. It's pretty cool. Okay, and then I've closed the element with the closing tag, and then we are good to go. And there's our sheep, right? I've refreshed our page, and there it is. Okay, very good. We are actually ready for the challenge for part 3. So I'm going to go back to the page. At the very bottom, you'll see challenge number 3. Notice above it, I just gave an example. I made another project, and I brought in a bigger model. Right? This is just a little sheep, but just to show you, some models are actually entire scenes or environments, right? So don't feel like you need to stick with the small stuff. Anyway, getting sidetracked. For this challenge, I want you to go ahead and find a downloadable model on Sketchfab. Or if you've made 3D models using other pieces of software, try to upload it to Sketchfab once you make your free account, and then use that. Okay? But go ahead, either way, find a model, whether it's already there or one that you've made, and bring it into your project, right, using the steps outlined in this part of the project. Make sure you set the position, scale, and rotation so that you can see it in your scene, and continue just to go ahead and keep tinkering and kind of refining with your website, right? Think about what you want it to be eventually, and keep designing it and shaping it to be what you want. Friendly little tip, you can set the background, you can give it a certain color, a background to your scene, by using the background attribute on the scene element itself. So just a little tip there if you want to adjust the background. In the next part of the project, I'm going to show you how to use a photosphere as the background. So that'll be some exciting stuff. Anyway, good luck. And if you have any questions or issues, feel free to ask in our online community. The link, of course, is right here in the navigation menu. All right. Bye-bye.